Welcome to the Unstoppable Product Pioneer Podcast, the podcast for business and product leaders ready to turn vision into execution and misalignment into momentum. I'm Tamar Stolz, and I'm on a mission to help you create clarity, streamline execution, and drive meaningful results. In each episode, I sit down with industry experts who share their insights, lessons, and wins, giving you the tools and strategies you need to turn alignment into your superpower. It's time to own your expertise, lead with clarity, and become unstoppable. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another awesome episode of the Unstoppable Product Pioneer Podcast. I am super excited for today's podcast episode because today I am joined by one of my favorite people. For those of you who if you don't know this fact about me, then you don't know me. This is one of my all-time number one favorite books. It's called Aligned, and you'll see here, there are two authors, one Bruce McCarthy and one Melissa. So if you are listening, if you haven't watched Melissa's episode, go check it out. So today we are joined by the one and only Bruce McCarthy. Welcome, Bruce.
Thanks, Tamar. It's good to be here.
This is, for me personally, one of the most all-time exciting moments. And I'm excited for everybody listening and watching because I know that you are going to have an awesome time listening and really walk away with so many amazing, actionable things to implement and do. And you're going to be empowered and motivated, I can guarantee. And if you have not gotten the book yet, please go get the book. And I am not a paid affiliate. People ask me all the time. I said, no, I'm just actually a genuine, authentic, passionate person about this awesome book because it's just so great. So go get the book.
So what did you like best about it? Why are you so enthusiastic about it?
That's a great question. So, in short, basically the book, really, I felt like it captured the character in the book. I don't want to give all of it away for those of you who haven't read it, but the character in the book, I really felt like, captured and helped me visualize so much of what I've been through and so much of what my experience was. I felt like I was reading a story that resonated and that I could relate to in so many ways. I was like, this was me. I did that. I had this challenge. And the way that the book tells a story in such a real way that I could visualize, and the way it's designed in such a practical, I guess it's just the visualization. It just makes the whole idea of strategic alignment and product management and cross-team collaboration and communication skills, it brings it all to life. It's as if, I would love to see one day a play called Aligned. I would love there to be a movie. No, seriously, I would love there to be a movie. For those of you who have seen, oh my goodness, the Disney movie, what's it called? With Inside Out.
Oh yeah.
Inside Out. That's kind of what I'm thinking. When I think of Aligned, then I think about what's going on in the background of an organization. How are the team dynamics playing into, the different projects, and how are, just people and complexities that people bring, and, team dynamics. And I'd love to see one of those movies of this story and just honing in on and bringing to life this concept of strategic alignment. I don't know.
All right. So it needs to be a Disney Pixar movie. I totally agree. And I really get the analogy you're making here with that movie in particular, which my daughters are big fans of, because every emotion is made into a persona in the movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, what we tried to do with this book is to illustrate the idea of different types of personas that you have to deal with as stakeholders in a real business. And you have to learn how to get them all to play nice together. You have to learn to knit together alignment and a plan and execution of that plan, despite the fact that everybody has their own personality and their own behaviors and their own way of communicating and their own priorities. And you've got to be able to speak everybody's language and get them all to see the advantage in working together with you. So I totally get it. I could just see, I'm starting to see in my head what Irie would look like and Sparks.
Oh yeah.
And so
totally. Yeah, as I was reading the book, that's like the movie that came to mind, because that's literally what I was doing. I was just like plugging it all in, and like to be able to like zoom into Iree's, brain as she's thinking through things and trying to figure out, it's it's phenomenal. But I don't feel like we gave you a proper introduction, Bruce. I mean, the founder of Product Culture, famous author, speaker, expert in product management, leadership team. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself, and your
Sure.
background and how you got here?
Well, like a lot of your listeners, I assume I was a product manager. And I did that for many years. And I worked my way up over time through different levels. I became a VP of product at a startup, sort of everybody's dream. Along the way, I ended up, because product management is this horizontal connecting discipline, because very often, especially when you're starting some new product from scratch, you don't have a whole staff of people who do all the other roles that you might want. I got involved with and was officially or unofficially in charge of lots of other things: design, agile enablement, marketing, partnerships, finance, you name it. And that really gave me a perspective on how all these pieces are supposed to fit together. It really helped quite a lot that I had to wear so many hats myself in jobs before product management and even during product management. Um, during that leg of my career, to have empathy for people in sales because I had done sales, to have empathy for people in design because I had done it, to understand where they were coming from and what they were struggling with and what their point of view was and what language they speak. About about 11 years ago now, I left my last regular job, and my original idea was to start a software company of my own. But that long ago, the discipline of product management was still a bit immature, and most people were looking for coaching or training or advising or some sort of consulting on how to set up their teams for success or how to do a roadmap properly. So my first book was on product roadmaps because that was an area that was very immature and old-fashioned, going back even just a few years. When you said roadmap, most people thought, oh, it's a list of when features are shipping, right? And it goes out a year or so. But that's really not the right role for a roadmap. Sure, that's a project plan, and you need that, but um, it doesn't tell a story, and it doesn't get your stakeholders excited, and it doesn't get your customers excited. It doesn't help to rally people in marketing and sales and customer support and all the other functions to get excited about what's coming when and what we can all do together to make it successful. You have to have much more of the why in a roadmap like that. I actually wrote a chapter on stakeholder management in that book. And the chief skill that we talked about in that book for getting alignment on your roadmap was um, shuttle diplomacy, which we talk about in Aligned as well. This idea of actually going and speaking to people who might be in your product council or whatever group you put together to approve your roadmap one-on-one individually before having that big approval meeting to try to drive some alignment with them and bring out the issues one-on-one in private. And then we recommend in that book also sort of a co-creation process for a strategy and a roadmap, where you don't just come down from the mountain with the tablets and say, here is the strategy and here is the roadmap, but instead you work across all these functions to pull it all together. So I feel like this book that's just come out this year is natural evolution um, of my career as a sort of a cross-functional leader, and a natural outcome of that, and a natural evolution of where the product manager role has been going and needs to go to be successful.
Right. Because I'm sure that when you started out as a product manager, the role probably was very different than it is today.
Yeah, I mean, I started doing it in the 90s before anybody really knew what product management was, and frankly, I didn't know either. When I first got hired, I had to sort of discover what the job was on the job. And in that time, and I had a really formative experience with my first boss as a product manager. He was the VP of product at our little startup. We had just like 75 people at the time. And I watched him do many of the things that I talk about in the book. I watched him. I can remember sitting in the marketing VP's office, and we're talking about something I don't even remember what, but my boss, John, would come by with his legal pad and just say, "Can I just borrow like 2 minutes of your time?" And sit down in the VP of marketing's office. And he had a checklist of topics he wanted to discuss. He was like, "I am trying to answer this question. Do you have an opinion? Do you have any input? What would you do if it were your decision?" And he would listen carefully, and he would ask clarifying questions, and he wouldn't argue. He wouldn't push back. He would say, "Thank you." And he would make some notes, and he would move on to somebody else's office and have the same conversation. Then, after he'd made all the rounds with multiple rounds like that of multiple questions, kind of making his notes as he went, we had a series of workshop type meetings for multiple hours with all the heads of different functions that John facilitated, and I was there as a participant and a witness. And we defined the next big version of our product that way over the course of a couple of weeks of these half-day workshops. And I had just never seen anybody facilitate alignment so effortlessly. And I learned from that, and that's been the essence of my approach to getting alignment ever since.
Wow. It seems, when you talk about it, it seems like it's so simple and it's so easy. He walked in with a pad of paper with a checklist, a few questions, but the behaviors, that he was really role modeling of communication and collaboration
Yeah,
and taking himself out of it and, you know, asking for feedback, asking for advice,
yeah,
seeking guidance.
yeah.
I mean, those are all qualities that are huge. Each of them in and of itself, like is a big soft skill or quality or
Right, there were a bunch
behavior.
of really smart things that he did there. I don't know if they were just his personality, that he just did them intuitively or what, but, because he was a young guy, but he mostly asked questions or proposed topics. He tried not to lead the answer, to, uh transmit what he thought and therefore bias what other people were saying. When people disagreed with him, he didn't argue and push back. He let other people make their case. I remember once the idea came up that maybe we could put advertisements for our products inside of our product. So if you had product A, you might see an ad for product B. And he brought it up in this cross-functional leadership team that he'd put together. And I think he and I both were thinking that the marketing team and the sales team would be all for it. And I think engineering and design were all waiting and listening to see how sales and marketing would react. And the first thing out of the marketing VP's mouth was, "I think that would be creepy. I don't think we should do that." Um, and I was surprised to hear that. And I just, as a young first-time product manager, was like, "Well, why not? I mean, wouldn't that help out your marketing efforts?" And they were like, "Well, maybe, but we have a marketing plan and a marketing budget, and I think we can make our numbers without messing with the product in that way." And I looked at John and I was like, "Aren't you gonna like make your case?" And he's like, "Nope. If marketing's not interested, that's fine. Let's move on."
Wow. Okay, John. I want to meet John. That is some real like role
Yeah.
modeling.
This is John Wang, who went on to become the CMO of HTC, the phone maker in Taiwan. He was my boss, and that was his second product management job. He was just and still, and this is the other thing he did was he you might interpret his behavior as somehow, I don't know, weak, like he was not pushing hard enough, not making his case or his argument like you'd have in some cultures. But frankly, everybody in the building knew that he was the smartest person in the company, right? And that he'd thought about this deeply, and that he if he was willing to accept your position, that you should take that seriously too.
Right. And that's huge because I feel like that also exhibits his ability to remove himself from it.
Right.
Because at that point, once he understood that we're all in this for the success of the business.
Exactly.
So if he's telling me no, what he's saying no to is this does not align with our business strategy. This doesn't fit in. Not no, John, bad idea, you know, whatever. Because if he would have, fought back, which for sure I could remember way too many examples of times that I started to fight back. And I remember like having this moment of like looking at myself in the mirror and saying, why am I fighting here? And
Right.
almost always it was because of my own personal, myself, my status, what people thought of me. Why do they think I have a bad idea?
Right.
And then I was like, 1 second, this is not personal. This is, they're telling me this great idea, Tamar. Appreciate that you're trying to add value to the company, but this doesn't fit into the picture here. So,
Right.
it's not gonna fit into what we're doing now, but let's go back to the drawing board and think of something else. So I feel like, in that situation, John, like you said, like everyone knew he was the smartest guy in the building. Like that's really powerful that he was able to, understand that the no meant for the business. We all
Right.
want it to be successful. This is not going to make sense. Let's move on.
Now, he was also, by leading with questions, by always giving people space to express their opinion, by not pushing, he was creating a safe space for people to disagree with him or anybody else in a uncharged, relaxed, safe setting. Now, not all cultures are like that. And not all people are comfortable with different levels of direct argument.
Mhm.
I remember a later company that I worked in. I had these two other executives that I worked with, and the two of them could not get along. Every interaction they had seemed to turn into a fight, and one of them would storm off and be grumbling under their breath. And the two of them, I realized, because I got along very well with both, and I could have a discussion where we didn't necessarily completely agree with either, that didn't end in grumbling, but the two of them were oil and water. And it was because they had very different styles of disagreeing. And as a good product leader, you have to be able to switch modes between the two of them. In the case of one person, he actually really enjoyed debate. He enjoyed it. It wasn't an argument or a fight with him. It was just a debate. And he would take either side of the debate just so that we could play out in the sort of adversarial process the way you would do in a courtroom, right? We could play out all of the pros and cons and the left and the right and the blue and the green and figure out. It was a way of uncovering the best answer through argumentation. And and it didn't take me long to figure out that that was his style. He would kind of, put his finger on his chin and look up, and say, okay, well, in theory, um, and so these were clues. He's being thoughtful. He's using the word theory. These were clues that he's just playing out the argument to see where it goes. Whereas the other person viewed every disagreement as some sort of personal betrayal, as some sort of um, emotional
Like
pushing
attack.
back, right? And she just wanted everyone to agree and to come to alignment and just couldn't tolerate that disagreement for the sake of disagreement. She complained that the other person was just argumentative, and just seemed to enjoy arguing. And I think that was almost true. He enjoyed the debate, but he didn't think of it as arguing in the sense of fighting.
Right.
So there was a way to have a debate or a disagreement with her, but you had to approach it differently. You had to say, okay, I see all the positives that you are laying out here in your position, and you probably are right, but there's maybe some things that you haven't considered, or maybe some things you're not aware of. Let's talk about those, and then let's together see how they fit or don't fit with what you're thinking. And so you had to go about it in a more considerate fashion, acknowledging the other person's position, not challenging it directly, but and trying to depersonalize it very much by saying, "Oh, it's not about you and me. It's about these facts or factors that have not yet come up for consideration. And so it's nobody's fault that we disagree."
Right. Wow. And this, of course, I mean, this was like an office you were all working, together in person, right?
In the
Like,
before times when people used to work in person, yeah.
right. I mean, I feel like there's something to be said about, just going back to the example. I'm so stuck on that on that story about John coming into the office with his pad of paper and pen,
Yeah.
but there's so much there. I feel like, that is something that, in my opinion, we're really missing
Mm.
with this, remote workplace, the ability to just,
Oh,
go into someone's office, sit down for a few minutes and say, hey,
yeah.
we talk for a
I'm,
few minutes. I just have a few things I want to whiteboard out, with you.
I'm really glad you brought that up. He was doing what I now call an unmeeting, which is, and you read this in the book, it's a short, informal, unscheduled discussion that in the days when we all worked in the same office, you might have called a hallway conversation,
Hmm.
right? Or a water cooler or a coffee machine conversation. And it's always been one of my favorite techniques to, like, if I need to talk to some people, but I can't get a meeting, is to take my laptop and hang out by the coffee machine and just wait. They'll eventually show up, right? Um, but you're in a remote culture. How do you have a hallway conversation when there's no hallway? Um, so today, Slack and Teams really take the burden for those kinds of conversations. The aspects of of a hallway conversation are usually it's one one other person or two max. Usually it's short, 5 minutes or less. Usually there's only one topic or one question, and it's unscheduled, right? Well, you can duplicate all of those in Slack. And you can even do it asynchronously if you don't, say, overlap in a lot of time zones. Um, One question. So if you're going to Slack somebody because you need to talk, don't Slack them 14 questions in one message, um, or write them 5 paragraphs and then say, "What do you think?" Because you're not going to get an answer at all. They're not going to answer that because they're like, "What is this? This is too long. I can't read it right now. I'll get to it later." And later never comes.
Right.
Um, because everybody's too busy for that. And you wouldn't do that in the hallway conversation, but you're trying to sort of preload everything that you want to talk to with this person. You might have 14 questions that you need to talk to this person about. But if you were to just drop by their office and say, "Have you got a second?" You couldn't ask all 14 anyway. And
Right.
you certainly wouldn't say them all before letting them take a breath and tell you anything. So treat it like a hallway conversation. Just say, um, "Hey, I wonder what you think about X," and then shut up. Wait for a response, even if it takes a day for them to get back to you. And then they get back to you, and now the thread is started. And so you say, "Oh, great, that's really helpful. Now, what about Y?" And generally what I find is that the conversation accelerates at that point. They start answering and you start asking, and you go back and forth and back and forth. And that back and forth is another feature of a good hallway conversation. Is it's rapid fire back and forth between the two of you, and you come to some understanding pretty quickly that
Right.
way. And you can do that, of course, with a whole bunch of people in parallel.
Right.
Sometimes you need to take it up a notch, and it would be good to be on video with people. You can sometimes typing out an explanation for something complicated, it just takes too long. Um, and so you can say in Slack, can we just jump on a call for a sec? And again, it's unscheduled, it's short. Maybe it'll, if it's really deep, then maybe it'll go 20 minutes now. But um, but you've already broken the ice, right? And you've already got them interested in the topic if they're willing to get on Zoom with you. Or, and it doesn't even have to be Zoom. Of course, you can do a huddle right there inside of Slack. And so it's just like click, and now you're talking.
Right. I started doing UX in 2018. So I didn't have so much time before we became, remote culture working. Most of my working, life has been over the computer. And I'll never forget, I sent someone, I don't remember, a colleague at work, a message probably with 14 questions on it. And the response was, want to talk?
Yeah. Well, and that was really smart. So this is the other thing, is that when we're working asynchronously, we're all pressed for time. We have too many messages to get back. The temptation, and I do this too, and Melissa and I kid each other about doing this. The temptation is to move through the messages quickly and give the fastest answer that you can without reading all of them, because otherwise they all are marked red and you're not sure what you were, so it's a pain in the neck. And when you do that, though, your answers are quick and not necessarily considered, and you skip the ones that are too long and hard to answer, and you never answer them. So you just got to bear in mind that people have that behavior and work with it instead of trying to work against it.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so I want to make sure that we pack in a few really awesome, highlights, takeaways from the book, because it's like one of my favorite books. But can you talk a few minutes, Bruce? Because this is a topic I know you're super passionate about. Could we talk a little bit about departments working in silos?
Oh, yeah.
And why is this something that we need to really, like, a problem we really have to agitate? Because departments working in silos, like for someone listening who's on a product team, right? Someone reads the book like, oh, this is awesome. Like, I'm going to bring this to my product team. And product usually has a unique positioning within a company because they have, direct access, and so many of the other departments flow through product. But just because product adopts a new, practice, if
right.
leadership is not on board, then forget it. Right. So
right.
I'm curious to hear, why is it so important to, there are so many nice concepts, but in reality, if departments are not, there's no, cross-team collaboration going on, why is that such a critical thing to try to, somehow motivate, encourage, empower people to start, exploring different avenues and ways to incorporate that within their company in order to implement and execute on so many of these topics that we talk about?
Well, frankly, I think cross-functionally is the only way to get anything new done. If you had a mature product and the marketing team knows how to market it, and the sales team knows how to sell it, and the support team knows how to support it, and the engineering team is just fixing bugs and adding features based on customer requests, probably operating in silos is mostly okay. But the moment that the competition begins to win some things and you have to rethink what you're bringing to market, the moment your product market fit begins to slip, and you need to start innovating again, the moment you need to think about a new product or a major new revision of your product, or even just a new feature launch, all of a sudden it goes from business as usual in every one of those little silos to we're changing something. We're changing the messaging. We're changing the pitch deck for salespeople. We're changing what features and capabilities the product has that the customer success team needs to support and educate customers about. Obviously, we're changing the feature set or the UX. And so we've got work to do cross-functionally within product engineering and design, and maybe data science, which people kind of expect. But what about the effect downstream on marketing and sales? And what if your company has multiple products and sales and marketing are just not so excited about your product anymore and they're selling other stuff? All of a sudden, your numbers are going like this, and you need to do something about that. You need to get you need to figure out what it's going to take to make sales and marketing more interested in promoting your product. And that's probably has to do with their objectives. If they can make their numbers with some other product, you are doomed. Your product is doomed. So, and that happened to me. There's a story right in the beginning of the book. My first software product as a product manager um, failed completely because sales and marketing were uninterested in it. Um, Engineering and design worked with me. We had something that worked for the customer, but sales and marketing were uninterested in acquiring customers for this product. It just didn't help them with their goals. And I completely missed that as a first time product manager, that aspect. So if part of it was that I was trying to create a new product, a second product in a company that only had one. But the situation is just as bad if you're trying to create a fourth product in a company that has three, um, or you're trying to get mind share across the organization for whatever it is that you're doing, if it's not just maintaining the status quo. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah, absolutely.
it was a huge and rude awakening for me when I realized, oh, my team isn't just the designer and the engineers. My team is somebody from everywhere. And
Right.
unfortunately, that was I was working for John, and I was still sort of reeling from that failure when he brought me into his process where we were thinking about the next big version of the core product. And I was like, oh, this is what I should have been doing. And I should have been
Wow.
doing it from day one in the conception of the product, not like I stupidly did like a couple of weeks before launch.
I mean, but you still learned like so early on. I mean, I feel like everyone has to experience. I mean, lucky for you that you only experienced it once. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know. I've had so many experiences in the companies I've worked with and the clients that I work with. It's kind of like a linear process. I feel like business strategy, who hands over to product, who hands over, and like it's like
Yeah.
very, very linear.
Yeah.
And like each team comes in when they're needed. But then the minute that there's a loop of some sort of feedback that has to come back, whether it's a problem, customer satisfaction score, customer engagement, customer frustration, pain point. It's like that loop somehow like just can't happen if there's a linear
Well, yeah,
line. Like,
it's there is a word for the what you just described, and it is waterfall. And sometimes people say, "Oh, all this agile stuff is crap, and waterfall was better." It's better at building something if you know exactly what you want to build and you have the resources dedicated steadily to it. Yes, it is better for that. But first of all, when you're inventing something new, you don't know exactly what you're trying to build. You need to test and iterate. And so agile gives you space for that. But even aside from that, um, it really completely fails to take into account that business of having um, all of those different teams that you described that would work on something in series outside of just product engineering and design, but also strategy and sales and marketing and finance. It fails to bring all of those into the process. Um, especially if it's true that you're going to be discovering what features actually work for customers, actually resonate and make the product saleable, you're going to be doing a lot of this back and forth, a lot of this iterative work on everything about the model. The how do we market it? Who's the ICP? What's the business model? And what is the necessary feature set? All of these things are, when you're creating something new, are uncertain and need to be worked on as a cross-functional team.
right. Absolutely. Oh, Such good stuff. I could talk about this for hours and just hear your amazing, wisdom within this whole topic. But just as we're looking at the time and thinking about what are some, practical, actionable, next step, highlight type things that we can, consider as we're tapping
Yeah.
into all this amazing, amazing, amazing stuff. One of the things as I'm recording, and going through different podcasts, episodes, one of the things that I'm finding as a good challenge is that each guest brings so much value and there's so much there that it's like you're drinking from a fire hose. It's like you want to take so much and you want to implement so much. And it's like sometimes I know for myself, I'll fall into the trap of trying to do too much and then I don't do anything. So,
Yeah,
one
me
of the
too.
things I try to really focus on for each episode is to take one or two things for our listeners to jot down.
Yeah,
Um,
okay.
or to think about whether it's, a resource, an idea, a framework, whatever it is. And I know, especially like with this episode, I know that people already have their things because there's been so many, but just thinking about the book and if there's specific takeaways, Bruce, that you
Yeah.
find to be more popular or
Well,
easy to implement or
I think the sort of two most important bits of advice. One is treat everybody else like a human being, not like a resource. And don't when you're talking to people in other functions and you're trying to um, get alignment with them, don't come in guns blazing and be um, here is my roadmap. Will you sign off? Or here's the strategy, and let me tell you why it is awesome and you should support it. Um, if you might eventually get to the point where, like the guy I was talking about in my company, you want to have a debate, but you need to establish a relationship with that person first. You need to figure out what your common ground is. And so I would say the best advice that I can give for establishing rapport outside of your own team is empathy, is listening, is asking questions out of genuine curiosity. Tell me about your job. Tell me what you're trying to accomplish. How are you measured? What does success look like? These are all the things that you would do in a customer interview, right? Um, think of stakeholders as a special kind of customer, and you need to establish that same kind of relationship of mutual understanding with them, starting with you listening to them. If you do a good job of listening to them, nodding as you're doing right now, summarizing what other people say back to them to make sure you've understood, and asking, "Did I get that right?" Then you're setting the groundwork for a good relationship, and you're earning kind of more of the right to say, "Great, I have heard you. Now here's what I'm thinking." They're much more primed to listen because you listened first. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is, and it might sound cynical, but I would explicitly make a map of your stakeholders around the organization. I would make a list of the people who you feel you need to be aligned with or need to be aligned with you and your product for it to be successful. I didn't even think of that as a first-time product manager. And you might say, "Oh, well, the org chart is the sort of thing I should use, right?" But the org chart, honestly, is at best misleading. Um, sure, you can trace, who you work for, your boss, their boss, up to the CEO. Um, but first of all, you've got this horizontal influence problem of influencing these other silos and functions that none of whom report to you or even to your boss. Um, but secondly, who is really influential in the organization is not reflected in that chart at all. Um, you need to think about, are we a marketing driven organization or sales driven or engineering driven, and set your sights on making those relationships with people who are highly placed in the organizations that most matter inside of your company. You'll know it's a sales driven organization if the CEO talks always about the sales numbers in the company meeting. You'll know it's sales driven if the CEO is spending most of their time actually helping to close deals or at least talking with the people from the sales team. You'll know it's sales driven if they're always able to get recs to hire and other departments are not. There's a bunch of these sort of clues that suggest that you're X or Y or Z driven that tell you where to pay attention, where to go mining for influence. And then there's the other thing is there's always somebody on the org chart who nobody reports to them, and they have kind of a vague title like strategy or business development or partnerships, and then nobody knows quite what they do. And that's deliberate because they are what we call CEO whisperers. They're somebody who the CEO keeps around because they think that they have sound advice. And so they have a bunch of informal influence within the organization. And if you've got someone or a few someones like that on your org chart, those are people that you need to get to know, or at least get to know what they care about, so that you can connect the dots when you're making your argument for, say, continuing to provide resources to your team, or getting marketing to pay attention to it. If somebody's going to be whispering in the CEO's ear, you want them to be saying good things.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So
awesome.
that we provide a little bit of help in the book on how various ways of mapping out who the stakeholders are, what they care about, how to talk to them, what they might need from you or expect from you, and what you can hopefully get from them. And one of the ways we suggest that you organize it is in something we call the stakeholder canvas, which we developed for the book. And it's available for free. If you go to our book website, alignedthebook.com, put in your email address, answer a few questions, you can download that and half a dozen other tools from the book to help you navigate.
Yeah, some really good resources. And the canvas is also on Miro.
Yeah, Miro,
Miroverse.
as well as Google Sheets and Excel.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's so awesome. That's amazing. Okay, those two key takeaways. But of course, I know just like me, I'm just sitting here and taking it all in. This is the good stuff. The stuff that makes me excited. And I'm sure for all those who are listening and watching, you're just glowing like I am.
Well, what we hear when we talk about the book, Melissa and I have both been doing a bunch of conference talks and meetups over the past couple of months. And what we hear over and over again is people saying, this is the hardest part of my job, and yet nobody talks about it. So it's super, I think, validating and empowering for people to see that they're not alone in struggling with this, and that there is some science that they can apply to making it work. I mean, honestly, the book is full of tools that we developed or discovered as solutions to problems because we were making mistakes and things weren't working, and we needed a better way.
Right. Yeah, no, it's amazing. I want to start a Chicago chapter. Like we got to do this. This is, I don't know how we're gonna start. I don't know, groups. We're gonna get facilitators. We're gonna have to
A Chicago chapter.
Chicago. Chicago. Okay, Bruce, for all those listening that want to get in touch with you, thank you. Bring them into their organization. Sometimes I feel like I listen to these episodes, and when I'd be working, before I launched my own business, I'd be working at a company, and I'd be like, I'd hear something and I'd say, okay, we got to get this person in our company yesterday. Everyone has to hear what I just heard. So how do people get in touch with you? What's the best way to reach you?
Well, we do talks for companies, and we do a lot of meetups and conferences. So if you're looking for a speaker for lunch and learn or something, we can help you out. We do it for free if you buy some copies for your company book club or something like that. But we also do coaching and consulting on making product teams better at what they do, and training if you need that for your organization. So reach out on LinkedIn, or there's a contact us form on productculture.org. And those are the two easiest ways to reach out.
Productculture.org. Okay. And we'll put all the links in the description below. But yeah, I mean, this is fantastic. And if you think that your organization needs it, but you think that they're not gonna be willing to listen to you, or they'll just brush it aside or be like, go fly a kite, then reach out to Bruce on LinkedIn and ask him how to formulate, the question, or how to, approach your manager about getting Bruce to come, because, there are probably smarter ways than at least I did back in the day when I was crazy pumped, excited, about when I figured out, the concept of workshops, which is most of the work that I do is workshop facilitation. Right. I wanted every single meeting in my company to be replaced with workshops. And I screamed until I was blue in the face that everyone just needs to run workshops if they want to be successful. It was not the smartest way of doing it. So be smarter than I was. Reach out to Bruce and find out what's a smart way to approach it to, ensure success and see the change that you want.
I'm sure we can help.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Bruce, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. It was an incredible episode filled with so many valuable insights. So I really, really appreciate your time. And thank you to everybody who is listening and watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and share with anyone that can gain from it. And thank you. Thank you for listening. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for having me, Tamar.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like and subscribe and leave a review. And of course, please be sure to check out our awesome community where you can connect with podcast guests, like-minded professionals, and be surrounded by others excited by your success. Keep pushing for impact and unlocking unstoppable growth. See you in the community.